Janet. Okay, recording in progress. That is progressive. Everyone, welcome to the Indiana German Heritage Society. This is our monthly Stammtisch program. Stammtisch means the regular table. So every second Wednesday of a month, except for January and July, we need to recover. We have a program, and usually it's here, but sometimes we go to other places. So I wanted to give you a background. Indiana German Heritage Society was formed in 1984, and the idea is to study, understand, preserve, share, promote, celebrate our German heritage, our shared German heritage of Indiana, which is very, very deep and very, very broad. So if you're not a member, please join. And I'll pass these out. And if you're not a member, please take one, fill it out, and send it money. Right. We made cryptocurrency. And our treasurer is here. So our whole idea of the Stammtisch is to share, celebrate, understand, et cetera, et cetera. So we're actually we have a number of programs throughout the year. We are going to have on June 8th, the next one, there is a new book out about Madge Oberholzer. And Madge, the author of that book, is a local woman. Her name is Charlotte Oettinger. And her book is out, and she's going to talk about the sad end of her. And of course, this is tied to the downfall of B.C. Stevenson, who said at one point in the 20s, "I am the law in Indiana." Grand Dragon. That's in June. And August 10th, we will be off-site, and we're making arrangements to be in German Park and to be serenaded, not by this orchestra that you're hearing, but rather the Liederkranz German band, which is sponsored by Liederkranz, which has been in business for 100 years this year. And then on the 14th of September, we have a number of student presentations. These students have won the essay contest sponsored by Indiana German Heritage Society. On the 12th of October, Lee Little, who has a book coming out on Indianapolis historic churches, and he's going to elucidate on the German churches. And there were very many here, especially in this neighborhood. And then on the 9th, we'll be off-site. We'll be at the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library, which is at 543 Indiana Avenue in a German building. And our presentation will be presented by Julia Whitehead, called Why Are We Celebrating 100 Years of Kurt Vonnegut? Kurt Vonnegut, Indianapolis born, and multi-generations of the Vonnegut family. His grandfather designed this here building. We all will, in December, we will also be off-site the 15th, which is a Thursday, so not a Wednesday, and we will be at the Christkindlmarkt, and we will have our annual sing-along of our very favorite German Christmas songs, and there will be no Frosty the Snowman or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, in spite of his German name. So there are programs coming up, and we invite you to try to keep most of these a hybrid so that people from afar can attend as well. I want to then introduce, the other thing is housekeeping. German Life magazine, there are 3 issues. The latest issue of June, July is out. Help yourself on the table there. And then some other events coming up, including our friends, the Liederkranz German Band, on the 5th of June, Sunday, at 5 p.m. we'll have their concert at the Liederkranz Hall, which is in the 1417 East Washington Street. And events here at the Athenaeum include the upcoming St. Benno Fest, and that will be here on this Friday the 13th. And also on the late June 26th, they're having Das Gartgrillfest. That's easy German to understand. Das Garten. There's a pig there, so I guess we'll be eating roast pig. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who's going to introduce our speaker, and we're very happy to have our speakers here. And Melissa is also going to explain what is this Cologne Indianapolis Committee. What is this all about? So she's going to unravel the mysteries of that. All right, turn it over to Melissa. And Melissa, by the way, is a new board member, and we're very, very happy to have her on our board because that helps us make better connections. Melissa.
Yeah. How's the sound?
Good.
Good. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. I'm Melissa Hobson, the new Indianapolis-Cologne Sister City President. The Sister Cities has existed since 1988, so we've been around for 32 years, and I'm very honored and to have taken on this role and to I'm grateful to be accepted and welcomed into the Indiana German Heritage Society Board and the German American community. So thank you all for your support. Some of you are also members of the Indianapolis-Cologne Sister City Committee. We're also welcoming membership and our contributions or simply your presence and participation in our monthly meetings. We meet every third Wednesday of the month. So our next meeting is May 18th at 5:15 p.m. And I can say that not everyone makes it at that time. So if you make it at 5:30 or 5:45, we'll still be able to make it and participate. So I want to thank everyone who has contributed because the Indy-Cologne Sister City Committee wouldn't exist without our mayor's office and the mayor's who confirmed this partnership between cities. And it also wouldn't exist without community and people participating. We're a nonprofit, volunteer-based 501c3, so what everyone does matters. I want to make special thanks to the leadership efforts of Chief Howard Stahl, Italian Chief Howard Stahl, and Chief Christian Miller from Cologne, who make this firefighter exchange possible. The conversation started in 2009 with the president of the Sister Cities, Sven Schumacher, and then our first firefighter went over in 2010. And every year since, there's been a firefighter that has gone either come here to Indianapolis for 3 weeks or over to Cologne for 3 weeks. So this wouldn't continue to exist and be as thrive the way it would without our other chiefs, and without Uwe Siemens, Lieutenant Uwe Siemens, who also helps in Cologne and make this possible and host all the firefighters. So I want to be sure to thank everyone in station number 3 and the IFP for their participation in this program. Also, Jason Thompson, who's our next firefighter that's going over in June, is here this evening. Thanks, Jason. It's going to be great. Tonight, I'm very pleased and honored to present our speaker, firefighter Mike Mullinex, who I just recently got to know. I've been getting to know a lot as the new president. Mike was born in Lebanon, Indiana. He's been a firefighter for 35 years.
Too long.
He worked for Pike Township and now for Station 18. He received a certification in international affairs from IUPUI. He also is an author of a book entitled The Blanket, which I'm very keen on reading and getting my hands on.
I have it.
Yeah. Okay, that's a reminder.
Okay.
And he is also a proud father, a ballroom dancer. What's that?
He's a Renaissance.
That's right.
I try.
And a travel enthusiast. Mike is also the new chair. He's going to be helping us out at the Sister City Committee as the new chair of Firefighter Exchange. So he's going to be helping create awareness of the exchange at our meetings and help support us with this exchange as it goes on. further, because it's the continued efforts of everyone involved that make it happen. And so I'm pleased and excited to welcome Mike Molinek. So please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, everyone. So thank you very much for having me this evening. I have been to a German Heritage Society meeting before. It's been a couple of years. I think after the last 2-3 years with COVID, I think everyone is ready to get back to some sense of normalcy. So, so these organizations are starting to kick back up. We're starting to spin up Indianapolis-Cologne meetings again. And just, yeah, it's kind of been sometimes sad last 2 years, but I think everyone's really geared up to get out there and get involved in our community and communities at large, such as Cologne. So I've got a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. First, again, Chief Stahl and his aide, they had to run out there on a run as we speak right now. But those were the two individuals who were downstairs at dinner, as Captain Sayre, who is driving the Chief. So hopefully they'll be safe this evening going out and they're on duty. So I think really to talk about the Sister Cities Committee, I think we have to go back a little bit in time and talk about where did the Sister Cities committees, where they come from? How was it organized? Who, why do we have a Sister Cities Committee? And if you look back, it goes all the way back to 1956 and President Eisenhower. No, I wasn't there when he organized the committee. I'm not that old, but he looked at, after two major wars in Europe, he looked at some of the underlying reasons why there was so much carnage in Western Europe. And a lot of it was the lack of people back then. They really didn't know each other. People from France didn't know people from Italy. Germany, they didn't know people from England so much. It wasn't like it is now, where we have instant access to TV and internet and even international trade. A lot of it was much more compartmentalized, if you will, locally, not even so much within all of Europe. It was kind of within their own communities. So President Eisenhower, he looked at this problem and he said, the best way we can probably keep the warring factions in Europe from fighting and killing one another was trying to develop more of a citizen diplomacy, or sister cities, where two smaller groups, two small cities might come together to talk, get to know one another. And if it's harder to destroy someone if you know that person. And so that started, and it's developed and blossomed. Indianapolis, the first sister city, was Cologne, and for good reasons. Obviously everyone here knows the heritage that the Germans brought to Indiana. The largest, one of the largest battalions that fought against the Confederacy was the 32nd Regiment in Indiana, and they were a German unit. And they spoke German. A lot of them were Quakers, and they went and fought against slavery in our Civil War. And a lot of people don't realize that the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, obviously, designed by a German, the Das Deutsche House here, so there's a lot of ties to Germany. And so it seemed appropriate at the time that the first sister city for Indianapolis was Cologne. We've expanded, we're up to 9 different sister cities in India, Taipei, England, Monza, Italy.
Taipei was the first.
What was it the first? I thought. I stand corrected. Okay, all right. Darn. I'm gonna have to go to Taipei now. I'm gonna have to. But Cologne was a quick or a very close second. Yes. Within the same year, I think. Okay. So that's kind of the background of the Sister Cities Committee and how it got formed and why we're here today. So
Sorry, going over my notes here. So in 2009, I was on this Indianapolis-Cologne Sister City Committee, and two key people, one we've mentioned already, Sven Schumacher, and another person we haven't mentioned, Chief David Grider of the Indianapolis Fire Department, who's since retired. They came up with this idea of how about if we try to send over an Indianapolis firefighter over to Cologne. We weren't the first official exchange program. We had sent over a librarian over to Cologne before. And so that was kind of the catalyst of, can we send a firefighter over to Cologne and vice versa? So in 2009, we started the process, the selection process. It was mostly people within the Indianapolis-Cologne Sister City Committee that came up with this process. We electronically emailed everyone in the city of Indianapolis, or the firefighters of Indianapolis, so it would be an open, fair, and honest process. We didn't want a good old boy system, friends of friends who we golf with. We didn't want that. We wanted everyone to be invited, male, female, whoever, to come in, and we accepted applications to the process. Even though I was on the committee, I went ahead, I was told, hey, if you want to, go ahead and apply for it. And so I applied. It is a very, very competitive process. Indianapolis, we have some pretty capable individuals on the job. People with a lot of background, a lot of education, people who've traveled to Europe before, in Asia and South America. So it was close. I did win. I was honored to be selected to be the first Indianapolis firefighter to go over to Cologne, Germany in 2010. It took some logistics. It took a little bit of time to organize. I went over there in October. And Uwe Simmons, he actually came over first and rode out, that's a firefighter term, ride out on your apparatus or your apparatus. So he first came over here and rode out for 3 weeks. And then a couple months later, I went back over there, and he met me and he set up everything. And it was really, really nice to have that person that you've already met over in a foreign country. I'd been to Cologne once before, but just as a tourist with an old German friend of mine. So a little bit different going over there as a tourist and then going over to work and actually be detailed to the Cologne Fire Department for 3 weeks. It's not a vacation. You're going over there and you're officially detailed. You take the life and follow a German firefighter. And typically, when I went over with and stayed with 5 different firefighters. And so they can kind of logistically, just not one person has to, take you by the hand, if you will, and take care of you. So they kind of split up the duties a little bit, which is, I think is good, because you see different things. I stayed in the middle of the city. Then, the next week I would go, way out in the country and stay out in the country. So you make runs just like you do here in the fire department. You ride the apparatus, and it was just a real great experience. My focus specialty was fire investigations, arson, if you will. I was on the arson investigation unit here in the city of Indianapolis, so I was interested in going over there and seeing how they did fire investigations. Well, it's kind of interesting over there. The fire department has nothing to do with fire investigations. It's all police. The police do the investigating. Typically after a fire, the fire department will do a report, send it off to the police department, put a stamp on the front door saying someone might be back at a later date to investigate the fires, and there's no chain of custody issues or anything over in Germany, which is kind of interesting. I'm not a civil liberties lawyer, but it's, yeah, so the police can go back at any time in someone's residence after a run and investigate that fire. So went over there, And kind of a little story branching off from this. When I was getting ready to leave, a bunch of us went to a restaurant in Cologne, and from time to time, firefighters will have a beer or two, believe it or not. And in walks in about 5 or 10 minutes later, someone I recognize this person. And it was one of the policemen that I rode down with a week or two before. And he goes, oh, fireman in a bar, what a surprise. And so that's kind of something really neat that kind of brings the two cities together. Here it is in Cologne, a huge city, and I walked into a place I've never been before, and here's someone that I already know. And so that kind of, brings things, it's kind of interesting, having that. So talking about the differences between the two services. Indianapolis and Cologne, geographically, they're roughly the same. I think Cologne might be geographically just maybe a little bit bigger, but all in all, kind of two comparable sized cities. Cologne has 13 fire stations. We're up to 44, 45 now. We just did a deal with the city of Beech Grove, and we're sharing services with the city of Beech Grove. And so we took on another station, and there's a second station down there that's an EMS station. I won't get into all of that. So you look at Cologne with 13 fire stations, and we have 44, 45. And it's just a little bit differences of how they're structured a little bit different. My fire station has one fire engine and a safety chief. So you might go over there, their station one, they'll have a fire engine, a tanker, an aerial, a heavy rescue, a water rescue. There might be 30, 35 people in that one fire station. How they design it over there, each station is designed to handle most emergencies that come up in that one district. Now, ambulances, they might have 4 or 5 ambulances at that one station. Not every Indianapolis Fire Department station has a medic at their stations. We do. Lieutenant Thompson, they don't, for instance, they're so busy and so big, they don't have really space, for a medic at that station. And so, it varies from station to station. In Indianapolis, you might have an ambulance, you might not. Over there, they'll have 4 or 5 medics in one building, which is kind of different. So, so even though, I said going over there, it's not a vacation. Of course, there's things that you can go over there, and they want to keep it fun for you. Obviously, Indianapolis, we want to showcase, what we have to offer, and just like Cologne does too. So when I went over there, I went to a football game. I saw the cathedral. Has everyone here seen the cathedral in Cologne? It's spectacular. And we actually had a run at the cathedral. In the museum part, they had a portable heater that overheated. And so with all of the artifacts there, it was a big deal. I mean, the chief came and the SWAT team with their police department, because it was a huge deal, just because of what the dome, they call the cathedral, the dome over there, the significance of that building and all the artifacts. And so,
relics that are kept there.
and what?
The relics.
Yes, yes. I've got some books over there. If you could pass those out. Most people know the significance of their shield. Yeah. So the 3 crowns, 3 wise men, and supposedly the bones of some wise men, supposedly right there. And that's supposedly. Supposedly. And so, yeah, so when Lieutenant Thompson, he goes over there, hopefully you get to see some really cool stuff over there.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When you said there are 45 fire stations in Indianapolis,
Yes.
13 in Cologne,
Yes.
While the two cities may be of similar size, how is the geographical layout?
So I was at their station one downtown, and their downtown station, that engine typically is the box engine, or if there's a fire on the far west side of town, one fire engine at that central station will go to that fire to assist if they need any help with that fire. I went on a run one time. It took us 20 minutes to get there, red lights and siren, which for us is like, that's an incredible amount of time. Typically, we like to get there within 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, if it takes us a response time of 5 minutes, that's a long time. And sometimes with mutual aid, sometimes we will go out to a neighboring department to help them. But yeah, and to them, they said that's nothing to go have a 20-minute response time to go on a fire for assistance. So that's a good point. And that's why one reason why they have so many ambulances in one district, in case one ambulance is taking someone to a hospital, they'll always have, hopefully always have someone there to take care of a sick or injured person. So most of the stations over there, since they only have 13, most of the stations there have some kind of specialty. Hazmat, confined space in case if there's a building collapse. You know, they have a station there that they have their own bulldozers, they have their own winches, they have their own you know everything there that you might need for a building collapse. One station, they have all that. You know, I talked about fire investigation as my specialty. I'd be out of luck if I went to Cologne, because over there it's an entire police. A little bit difference in training over there. So at Cologne, no matter who you are, you go to their state fire school. Okay, so you go to their state fire school, and basically you go there, and it is it's an associate's degree in fire science. And from there, cities will go and then hire their people from that state fire school, and they'll go out to Dortmund or Cologne or Frankfurt. And they don't have their own training institutes. They have training, and they might bring someone up to speed how the little differences that the stations might do, but they have state fire schools. Here we put on our own recruit school. So Indianapolis, there's a recruit school going on right now. I think they're almost done here in the next couple of weeks. They'll be done, and we'll have 60 some odd recruits coming out to fill spots for people who've retired or might be off sick. We do it ourselves. You don't have to have a PhD in chemistry to come onto the fire department. I say that I hosted one firefighter. It wasn't an exchange program, but I hosted one individual. He was finishing up his PhD in chemistry, and his idea was he wanted to come and he wanted to be a hazmat chief in either Munich or Cologne. He had no experience. He had no street experience whatsoever. So he got his PhD, and then he went to the state fire school, and he's chief. Very, very interesting, at least to me. I'll speak for myself here. That wouldn't happen here. Here, typically in the States, we have a high degree of street knowledge, experience, and not necessarily formal education is always good. And we are slowly starting to bring that in, where you have to have some college to get promoted, lieutenant, captain, and chiefs now. I think they have to have the full 4-year degree, just as associates in fire science, which to me makes sense. That's kind of debatable within the fire service, but I think to have some formal education or to have continuing studies is a good idea. So what's next? So here next month, Lieutenant Thompson, he is going to represent the city and the department. And he's going to go over there, and sometime they'll have another firefighter from Cologne come over here. Now, when I talked to Uwe Simmons at FDIC, they talked about sending over a female firefighter over. Over in Germany, they don't have as many female firefighters as we do here in the United States. We're up to 60, 80 female firefighters in the city of Indianapolis. You know, we have female firefighters in recruit class right now, and we have female firefighters as chief. And so it's equal in that part. A little bit, I think, in Germany, they view the fire service as more of a trade than a service. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's a little bit different, getting a little bit cultural differences with, if I can say this, with females. And we talked a little bit about how differently some women are viewed in certain societies. They only have 5 or 6. But I think it's good that Cologne is expanding out and diversifying a little bit. They had nothing against it when I asked. And we had one firefighter back in 2016, I believe, Sue Shepard. She was a female firefighter from Indianapolis, and she went over there and she had a great time. She was on the front page of their newspaper. Super Sue. And a great person. She had a really good time. And she showed a lot of the guys up over there in a push-up competition. And she beat most of the guys over there, which I thought was really, really cool. So, so that's changing, that's evolving. Okay. One thing with the 2 departments, I hope we can keep this exchange program going. We had one firefighter go over there on the exchange program, and typically, you like some time to visit with the chief of the department, sometime either before you leave. And the chief of the department asked one of our guys, "What do you think about our department? Anything that you think we should be doing differently?" And our one guy said that he noticed that only the team leaders or the officers in the companies, or engine, ladder, typically only the leaders have a radio. And the other guys in the back who do a lot of the work, they didn't have a radio. Well, sadly, during the athletic club fire, some of you might remember back in the 90s, we lost 2 firefighters. And it's debatable if they could have had a radio or not. Would that have made a difference? Maybe, maybe not. But they got lost and we couldn't find them for a while. And we lost 2 firefighters. And so this firefighter, Jason Kissler is his name, he said, "Chief, before you have a tragic, accident, learn from our mistake, and so you don't have to lose a couple guys to, learn and keep your men and women safe." And so shortly thereafter, the next year, the chief pushed for radios, and now every Cologne firefighter has a radio as part of their personal gear. Was it an Indianapolis firefighter that brought that on? I don't know, but it was discussed, and so hopefully you put that the idea into the fire chief.
Take credit for it.
That's what I say. That's why I say Indianapolis took credit for it. So, and another thing we can possibly learn, back in the Mayor Ballard administration, he talked about expanding the scope a little bit of sister cities committees, not just Cologne, for more economic development. Now, economic, domestic, and foreign policy is a little bit above my pay grade, but I say, why not? And we talked a little bit about it the other day. If I can help you economically and vice versa, that would still bring in and strengthen those ties to those 2 communities. And so who knows, that might be something that we can work with the chamber with, all 9 committees, and maybe help improve a little bit better. The economy is kind of going up and down right now. So I think any kind of help internationally with the economic system and business would be a good thing. In conclusion, I would just like to say that if you look what's going on in Eastern Europe right now with Ukraine, the world is a little bit smaller place right now. And so if you look at what's happening over there, I think city leaders, state, federal leaders need to look a little bit just beyond what's going on outside their window. One of the firefighters that we had to go over there, his wife was from Crimea. And so in 2014, she goes, oh, I guess I'm Russian now. And so that kind of brings things, closer to home when you know someone whose family members are stuck there right now. Okay, and that's not someone in Chicago, that's not someone in New York, that's someone here. Someone's family is over there, and they're dealing with a lot right now. And so can the sister cities, committees, I think they have a lot to give. And I think any little bit, to help make the world a better place, I think we should do that. So thank you very much. Questions? I've got 3 books out and about. Some of them are kind of cool. One was a huge almanac for the Cologne Fire Department, and 2 are specific ones, pictures of my ugly mug out there. And then they made up a little pamphlet of my visit over there. And so, yes, sir.
Do they operate in shifts the same way kind of we do here?
So I work 24 hours on, 48 off, the A, B, and C shift system. I go into work tomorrow at 8 o'clock, typically everyone gets there earlier than that. And then I'll work until, I don't know what today is. I know it's C shift. It's Wednesday. And so I'll work until Friday morning, 8 o'clock. Okay. Over there, they work 24 hours on, 24 hours off. And they do that. It gets complicated because it rotates. They'll do that 5 times, and then they're off 4 or 5 days, and then rotate. Yeah, I like our shift system, but they work 24/24.
I think the smaller towns have a volunteer department.
There is still a volunteer element over there in Germany, and even now, I don't know how it is now in Potz, in a suburb of Cologne, that they have volunteers in the suburbs of Cologne, Germany. I think I'm pronouncing that right, Potz. It's a suburb of Cologne. But yeah, so they do have a volunteer system over there in Germany. Cologne, with its size, just like Indianapolis. Sometimes 2 shifts ago, we had 11 runs in one 24-hour period. And that's a little bit much for a volunteer company to be able to do. And I started out as a volunteer. I have the highest regards for the volunteer system. And it can be very tough responding in your community to your neighbor's house on fire, or if someone's sick or injured. But yes, they do. They have a volunteer system over there.
Said that they treat it as a trade, and I noticed the young guys in there. So this is kids that are starting pretty young in the yearbook. Like maybe some.
Yeah,
really.
It's. I hate saying this. It is a younger man's and woman's game. The injury rate, unfortunately, is kind of high. I think everyone is been injured at one point or the other. In public safety, not just firefighters, but police and EMS, a lot of back injuries, a lot of knee injuries, and so I've been injured a couple of times, and I'm not bragging because sadly, if you're going to be a firefighter in the States for very long, you're going to get hurt. So so that's why we need those younger guys to come up and take my place, please.
To touch on that, I would say out of this recruit class of 60 some firefighters that we have, the average age in that group is probably 25. You have to be 21 here, you have to be 21 to be hired, no older than 36.
What I was noticing is a lot of those kids, the guys in there look like they were teenagers, and Germany has a pretty developed apprenticeship programs. They have a lot of that. And so they might be going to the school where, is that true? I mean, yeah, that's probably where they're going, where they'll start working as a younger kid, and as a teenager. So.
And I started out as, technically 17. I couldn't make runs as a volunteer. There were, certain regulations way back when. And I started making runs when I was 18 years old.
But to that, is that part of the official apprenticeship system that they have?
I'm not 100% sure. I know that they're, so over there, they train them to do everything. After the 18 months of state fire school, like for instance, they call themselves all paramedics. What they call paramedics, what we call paramedics, a little bit different. That is one thing. Technically, our paramedic program is a lot higher, and I'm not knocking their system, but we would call their paramedics advanced EMTs. Where over in here, our paramedics can intubate, give drugs, shock certain cardiac rhythms, where I can't, and over there, their paramedics can't do that. And so each system can learn from one another. Yes.
So the training is more centralized nationally. Will fire or there will recruits then typically relocate, because here it's more community based.
Yes. That's a good question. I would think they would, just like the one chief or the one guy getting his PhD in chemistry I hosted for a day. I took him out and transported him around, took him to the airport, back to the airport. I want to say he either lived in Cologne and was trying out for the Munich Fire Department chief, or vice versa. So, yeah, and we have some people who have moved. And I work with a substitute fireman, a younger firefighter, and he moved from New York City, not New York City, but New York State, to come here for the job to be a firefighter.
We do things differently state by state here in the States. So I know personally in the state of Florida, they have a state fire school. So to your point, if you want to be a firefighter in the state of Florida, you have to go to the state fire school. Once you graduate from that school, then you can apply anywhere in the state of Florida. And so, yeah, you may be
Absolutely.
Too. Typically, our fire staff is unionized. Is that the case there?
They do have unions. From what I was told, it's not as strong as it is here. But there is a union, but they said it's not like it is here.
It's kind of it's strong here, I would say.
Yeah, I think most members are union paying dues.
You need to perhaps remember that in Germany, in particular, the trades were organized very to minute details in the Middle Ages already. And you had a certain progression that you had to follow before you could advance.
Yeah.
In this country, a lawyer like Abraham Lincoln learned at the knee of some teacher and never really had any formal training. So that's very different.
Yeah.
And I think part of why we have unions is to make up for the regulation and the safety that comes with being organized and having things in a structured way where there is no favoritism. I mean, there probably is favoritism anyway.
I think the way of the world.
That's the way of the world, but it's much more regulated. So I love your idea when you said it makes such a difference if people know somebody.
Absolutely.
Know face to face. I had, I'm a lot older, so I could not. And part of the Sister City program also is an outgrowth, perhaps, of a program of finding pen pals and exchange students. I have a pen pal, and I'm probably very focused and dedicated. I have had this pen pal since I was 18. I'm not going to tell you how long that is, but it's a long time.
Just the other day.
Yeah. And the hatred between France and Germany was so great. It didn't matter what this person was like. This is a Frenchman, and you hate him.
Yeah. So when I finished up my International Studies certificate program, I went over, the only way I could do it was I couldn't do a full semester in Germany at the time. And so during the summer, I was able to go over and get leave and do a short summer session over in Mannheim. And we took a day trip to Freiburg to a Mercedes plant over there. And it was just as many French workers as there were German. And there was a line. Germans over here, French over there. I understand it. I think it's sad. Hopefully,
But it's worth a try.
Yeah.
It's worth a try.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to give you some insight about the beginnings of Sister City. It had to do with William Hutchinson, who served for 4 terms. And I invited him to speak on German American Day on the City Market Plaza. It was noon on October 6th in the 80s. It was the 80s. And he was ready to go up to the microphone, took his notes, put them in his pocket. And he said, I'm not going to speak from these notes. I want to speak from my heart and my mind. He said, I want to talk about Cologne. He said, in 1950, blah, 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 whatever it is. Let's say 56. He said, I arrived in Cologne. I was a theology student. I arrived in Cologne at the Hauptbahnhof, right there on the Domer Platz. He said, it was a full moon. And coming out that door, there was a moonlight on the great dome in the Cathedral of Cologne. He said, I was moonstruck. And he said, there was still a lot of trouble in Cologne. But he said, the moon show on the great dome was like speaking to me. He said, I will never forget that. It's an experience. And then he said, as mayor, I wanted to fulfill this dream of mine, connecting my city of Indianapolis to the city of Cologne because of that vision that I had. And I thought, wow. And you got to remember, he's an ordained Presbyterian minister. He turned that. No, he didn't. But that's it. It was from his, his college days. It was that, and since it's the 3 kings, I'll say it's the epiphany that he had. And it stuck with him all those years. And then, this was already in his, I think, in his 3rd term. But he acted on it. And, he was a good man.
He brought it up. He helped bring it up.
Yes. And I worked there in the rat house, but I wasn't one of the rats. Okay. That's one of my jokes. You can write that down. And I saw him in action. And so I was just dumbstruck by that extemporaneous speech that he gave. And that personal connection. And then he made it happen. And then the Lord Mayor came over, the Oberbürgermeister, and Oberburger came over. And then I was designated as the official tour guide, the tour of Europe. And then it just built. They had the signing. They had the signing in the Rathaus there. Conrad didn't want to use our city county building because it was really kind of unclean. And so we had it over at Scottish Rite Cathedral.
Oh, very good.
And so
No, I did send one of the firefighters that we went up to the observation tower in the city county building.
Good.
Now that's still kind of cool.
It
And
is.
so
It is.
took them up there for a really good view of the city. And that's still kind of
Yes.
doing that.
Well, as one French writer said, when he went to lunch, he went to lunch every day in the Eiffel Tower, but he despised the Eiffel Tower. And so, why do you come here every day? He said, it's the only place in Paris where I don't have to look at it.
The Parisians call the Eiffel Tower a scar on the face of Paris. Something like that.
Somewhat, but those are the ones who are selling the souvenirs.
Yeah.
And then Volkmar Schultz, the Jew.
Yes.
He is like the patron saint of sister cities. He is so in love with sister cities, the concept, and he is so knowledgeable. Last time I saw him, I was tour Führer again, and you know what? He was correcting me, and I thought, I'll accept that as a challenge. Next time I'll do better. But that's how he is so consumed by this. Volkmar Schultz, is a political, he was in the Bundestag and so on. And it's a guy like that. That's the kind of people like Hudna, have the fire to do this. And I
think that's the kind of people you need.
Yeah,
so it's just sadly, so many Americans think international relations is going to like a Chinese or Mexican restaurant, and then that's it. That's all. It's like, and there's nothing wrong with that.
and
celebrate the
you
Hispanic
have that
community.
personal connection and that devotion.
Yeah.
So Volkmar loves to come to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And correct him.
Yeah, but I wish more Americans had that fire.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a struggle.
Well, he was an exchange student in high school in the 50s in Ohio. Which is okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Some of that sections of their but
But wasn't Volkmar Schultz the Freundeskreis president before Hedwig Usman? For Cologne Alliance?
I think so. He is so active. He's probably held every position anything to do with the sister city or the
And the original,
Partnerschaft.
and the Mayor Norbert Burger's wife, Claudia Burger.
Yeah.
You met probably.
Yes.
She's a part of Cologne Alliance.
She was here, I think, 2019, and we met up with her then.
Yeah. She's very active.
She's in love with Indianapolis too.
Yeah, she's very active.
Yeah, very, very much in love. And Cologne's other sister city is Stalingrad. I mean Volgograd.
I think I've heard that one.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting over there.
One thing I wanted to ask or sort of comment on is, I didn't unpack all the mysteries of the sister cities, but we have 4 exchanges. The librarian, the jazz, the school, and the firefighter exchange. And the firefighter exchange is the one that has been the most consistent for 10 years. Outside of the pandemic, from 2010 on, there was either one firefighter in Cologne or one here. And I think my impression when I got to meet during FDIC, Uwe Siemens, the lieutenant. And I noticed that there was real friendship and a bond. And I've even gotten emails from other firefighters who were applying to go over, who talked about how they, from the, not even from being there, but from another firefighter coming over, how they became interested. They become pen pals with firefighters in Cologne, younger ones here. And would you say that maybe not only from the consistency of having the exchange every kind of continuously happen, but also through the culture of firefighting?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Because you're not only hosted by families in each city, but you're there 24 hours, you cook, you eat together, whereas.
That's a lot of it, where the police, they're much more of a independent, solitary, sometimes they're working as one. So I haven't worked with Jason in years, but like tomorrow, if I go to his station, he might say, "Hey, yeah, go over there," and make fun of me, but as we all do, but then we work together and we go on runs together, and so I think we have more of a culture of that sharing, going from A to B, and it's like, okay, here I am today, and I'm going to work at this station, and then the next day you might move on to somewhere else. But yeah, so I think that's really good where you hit upon that culture being a firefighter, and
Chief Stoll said that one thing he tries to do when the firefighters come over is have them stay each week somewhere else here.
Different families.
You get a different taste of it.
They live with different families and understand how different families also live. And I thought that was interesting. You're not hosted by one person the whole 3 weeks.
And I think that's important. And logistically, it's tough if you had one family responsible for someone else from out of town for 3 weeks. I mean, logistically, that's kind of tough. And so breaking it it does help. And like I said, I stayed in the middle of the city. I stayed out in the suburbs. They don't have suburbs like they do, but I stayed on the outskirts. I went out into the country, and I like it. I liked visiting the people out in the country. Ich bin ein Landman. I'm kind of a country kind of person, and I like it. And so it's fun. A lot we can share. Yes.
One of the things that we haven't talked about is the United States military has a really strong relationship with the German military.
Yeah.
We train fighter pilots in California. We train them over here. There's actually a Bundeswehr in Washington, D.C. There's one in Texas. There's other places. And there's a real camaraderie shared back and forth. So we have a really, really strong relationship, a constant relationship with what's going on in Germany, which of course flops into Ukraine and the whole Europe, or Europe, what's all going on over there. So with the military, United States military is really close with the military in Germany. So closer than, we don't send a few people over, we send huge groups over there. And Kaiserslautern, just right by Ramstein, which is a Landstuhl hospital. For all the wars that are going on in Iraq and all these other places, they're going right up to Landstuhl for immediate care. That's probably one of the largest hospitals in Europe. Landstuhl is.
I was in Mannheim one time with another exchange program, something separate. It was the president's. It was a federal program where they had outstanding young diplomats came over here for training and then left. I forget there was one Polish individual and someone from Mannheim, and we were in Mannheim having dinner, and we went to the train station, and I saw someone in American soldier in full military uniform, and I go, oh, wow, it's like, is that okay? And he goes, no, it's okay. I mean, they're a part of our society and culture and economy, and because you start looking at old movies, World War II movies that we grew up as kids watching that, and he goes, that's the past, that's done. This is the new.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that Americans don't realize. That there's even American high schools in Germany. A lot of people don't even realize that.
There's so many.
I was floating down the Rhine River, and there's two teachers from Iowa, and they were going. There's a special place in the Rhine River. Anyway, they had it mixed up. So I explained to them what that was, and then the one looked at her friend, and she said, "This one speaks English." And so the conversation went on, and then finally she said, "How did you learn English so well?" I said, "Well, I learned it in school." And they said, "You don't have an accent." I said, "No, because I'm an American. I work over here as a Department of the Army civilian, and I'm also in the Army Reserve." They said, "What?" you know, the United States says the Army is still over here. And I thought, well,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
so that exists, you know, that all that stuff exists in a lot of the people's minds, because my son and my friend Don, their kids all went to school over there. I have three kids that graduated from Stuttgart and Heidelberg High School, and they played on the German soccer teams, and they did all this stuff. But a lot of Americans have no concept of this, because it's the military over there, Department of Army civilians are over there. I was in both situations. So there's a whole world that's over there, and most people have no concept of that.
You know, my daughter just got back from Italy, and that was her third trip already for her, going to Europe.
Oh.
And so,
Yeah, some of us, I was over there, the last trip I was over there, which was for 19 years. And I was over there in the military for almost 4 years. So there's, you know, when you talk to people here, they have no concept of this.
And that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, it's understandable though, because we live in our little world, and like, I'm from the Chicago area basically, and that's a state that's far to the west somewhere. And then there's a whole big land, and then there's mountains, and then there's California. So
You can jump on an airplane in Chicago O'Hare and be in Europe in 7 hours.
That's right.
And just take the red eye, get on the airplane,
Yep.
try to take a nap, and you get there, and it's morning, and take off. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you again. Sign off for our.
Thank you.
What were some misconceptions you had that were?
So I had been to Germany once before. I had a friend who was from Dortmund, and so we actually flew into Cologne back when I think Continental, way back in the day, had trips into Cologne. And so he had a sister there. So we went there and visited his sister once. And so I'm not a know-it-all, but trying to be international, trying to think globally. I was kind of up to speed, except for the Koch dialect is so difficult. I had a really hard time with the language barrier in Cologne. Dortmund, I got along pretty good. Mannheim, I got along pretty good. Closer to Stuttgart, Schwäbisch. Yeah, like, oh, it's difficult for this Indiana boy to try to just the college 2 years of college German. Yeah, so a little bit different over there.
Yeah, they always tease my wife. They say, "What a cute accent you have," and she said, "Well, what a neat one you have." You know, and then they say, "What? You have an accent?"
Oh yes, oh yes.
Claudia,
Anyone on Zoom? The people in the Zoom community.
I just was going to say that Claudia Grossman.
Oh yes.
Yes, you had her
Look.
for class.
Great.
I did too. Dankeschön, she says. Ich muss leider gehen, aber das war sehr interessant. Good to see one of my former students doing so well.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you for your instruction.
I had her as well.
Really? And her and Gabrielle Broussier. Did you remember Gabrielle?
I did not. I had Claudia when she first came over, working on my master's.
One thing I wanted to point out too, because Bill said something about the bubble in 1956. And I always learned in Cologne that it was completely destroyed in the war, 90% of the city.
Right.
And they used the dome as a place to figure out where to bomb. So access points. So if they knew the dome was here, they knew where to go. So which is one of the reasons why it wasn't destroyed, because the planes could see where to drop. And so one of the reasons why the city historically people call it ugly
is because all of the buildings are destroyed and quickly rebuilt right after, of course, that people could have housing. So some people, I think a lot of the Southern German architecture, and
It's gorgeous.
right, it's gorgeous, but they rebuilt based on the historical.
They used a lot of plaster to
Yes, but they also
recreate
took more
stones.
time, and Cologne, a lot of the Ruhrgebiet, the industrialized area, built it very quickly after people to live in. So what you'll notice when you're in Cologne is there's the dome, and then there's the half circle of wall that used to protect it.
Mhm.
And they call it the ring around the city. And probably you drive around there all the time, but there's a ring around the city, a main road that follows the barrier. Used to be the wall around the castle.
Yeah, in the museum at the dome, they have some bomb fragments, and they have pictures of where some shrapnel came and damaged the building. But now, did the British and Americans intentionally leave it alone, to use as a source for bombing, and they knew the religious significance of it?
Yes.
Because they bombed just about every other church in Cologne,
Yeah, true.
and then all the ones in Europe.
Yeah, if you go to Warsaw, now this was back in the 90s again, was just decimated, where the Germans and the Soviets just fought, and just everything was just, and it's one big block concrete building, city. And then they have an old city that they rebuilt.
By the way, there's a good author, Anne Tannenbaum. She has a really good book out on how the Soviets moved east and what all happened and how they decimated everything else. And the Nazis and the United States and everything was going on. They had a special deal with Heidelberg that the Nazis would not put any military around the Heidelberg area. And the United States and Great Britain and the Allies would not bomb.
Yeah.
So that's the oldest university in Germany. So
Well, one thing you asked about some misconceptions. I have problems with the misconceptions a lot of Americans have about Germany. And it's just like, there's some negative connotations about the German people, German history, and I go, time out. The Nazi period was 13 years. Stop.
Yeah.
I mean, we are not without sin either. So
Yeah, I think it's why I joined this motive, because there's a good element to German history.
Oh, absolutely.
There
Absolutely. Look at music and culture and literature.
They're friendlier than what people think too.
Yes. Nope. Okay. All right.
Very good.
Thank you very much for having me.
Very
We'll
much.
see you all next month to hear about